including anthrax, influenza, and smallpox, is reeling today after a series of embarrassing mistakes.
I'm just astonished that this could have happened here. I'm upset, I'm angry, I've lost sleep over it, and I'm working around the clock to make sure we do everything possible to resolve it.
Today, the CDC acknowledged that a sample of animal influenza sent to a lab in May was contaminated with the deadly H5N1 bird flu, exposing lab workers. Even worse, it wasn't reported right away.
As to why it took 6 weeks for that to be made apparent to us, I can think of no valid explanation.
H5N1 bird flu is so infectious that millions of birds in Asia have been slaughtered just to keep the disease from spreading. Another mistake? Last month, 86 CDC employees were potentially exposed to anthrax after samples were mishandled.
If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. We
get sick and has tumors in her womb, and they said that this was not genetic but environmental.
My son was diagnosed in 2010. When a young person is diagnosed with cancer, you start questioning why.
Aunt, mother, 3 of these aunts died of cancer.
About a year after that, my wife then gets renal cell carcinoma and dies a year later after that. We have over 1,300 documented cancer victims right now, just in a 1-mile radius. I'll be quite honest with you, it's changed my life so radically, sometimes I don't even know who I am.
1,300 people in a 1-mile radius. And what's causing so much sickness? It turns out all these victims have one thing in common. They live next to a military base called Fort Detrick.
As you can see, this is all of Fort Detrick now, all the way out. So, this is the area, this is like ground zero.
This, which is all Area B behind
This
us.
is all Area B, and you can see the fence by barbed wire all the way around.
So, Fort Detrick, you said is a level 4 lab for biological
Correct.
Testing and development.
In historic Frederick, Maryland, are the biological warfare laboratories. The volunteers have been positioned on the outside of the test sphere, in which a cloud of biological warfare agent can be generated.
What kind of chemical and biological materials was Fort Detrick developing?
Pretty much everything known to man that is deadly. Agent Orange, we know that for a fact. Anthrax. Smallpox.
Mustard gas, weaponized botulism, the list goes on.
I have decided that the United States of America will renounce the use of any form of deadly biological weapons.
And they put everything in these 55-gallon drums, and they buried at least 100 drums. They say about 30 foot down. But anyone knows, with any logic at all, eventually a drum is going to rust. And as they rust it, little by little, all of these deadly toxins were going into the aquifer. It is one of the worst contaminated aquifers in the world.
In 2009, Fort Detrick was added to the EPA's Superfund priority list, making Area B, located here, one of the most polluted places in the nation, just across the street from this crowded neighborhood.
So you've lived here your entire life?
I was born and raised here, yeah.
11 members of your family have suffered from cancer. Have they died as a result?
Died, either had cancer or died.
Beyond the fence is Fort Detrick.
Right. Yeah, that's their dump area.
That's the dump.
They dug straight back into that bank and then stacked 55-gallon barrels up, about 5 high.
That's right.
The aquifer runs down through here. And this is leaching toxins into the stream all the time. This stream runs right through the middle of Frederick City.
Typically normal to paralyzed or even dead within 12 to 48 hours.
The first death this season in Massachusetts. 50-year-old Lori Sylvia passing away Sunday. With 4 cases detected there, officials now spraying for mosquitoes where 30 communities are at critical risk. In Michigan, 3 more cases, including 14-year-old Savannah DeHart, who's now on a ventilator and feeding tube.
Her brain is trying to heal itself, and she can't do anything until that happens.
Health officials are also monitoring Connecticut, Delaware, and Florida tonight, where the virus has been found in mosquitoes and animals. Nearly 30% of people with encephalitis from EEE will die, while many others are left with permanent neurological damage.
It can be very devastating on quality of life.
The vast majority of cases produce no symptoms, some only mild flu-like symptoms, but there is no vaccine or cure for the virus.
Now, nearly 250 U.S. athletes were in Wuhan in October last year, alongside athletes from 100 different countries who took part in the World Military Games. Chinese media claimed that the U.S. contingent stayed at the Wuhan Oriental Hotel, 300 meters from the seafood market where it's thought that the outbreak started. 5 of the U.S. troops reportedly developed a fever on October 25th and were taken to an infectious diseases hospital for treatment. 42 employees of the Oriental Hotel were reportedly diagnosed with COVID-19, becoming the first cluster in Wuhan. At the time, China claims only 7 people from the market had been diagnosed and treated before the hotel staff. All 7 had contact with the 42 from the hotel. The reports assert that the American military games team trained near a U.S. Army laboratory at Fort Detrick that studies deadly infectious material. Now, the catch-22, of course, is that the laboratory was closed by the CDC last July, citing safety concerns. And China questions the US's transparency over the matter. Outside of China, researchers are also investigating the possibility of COVID-19 existing way before the first known case in Wuhan, China. In turn, some US commentators and politicians have their own theories beyond the mainstream idea that it originated in a market in Wuhan.